It's Ken Harbaugh with the MeidasTouch Network. The numbers are staggering. Special elections are showing 20-point swings away from Republicans. Democrats have already flipped 30 seats in state and local elections before a single midterm ballot has been cast. The generic ballot advantage is the largest in decades. By almost every measure, 2026 is shaping up to be not just a blue wave, but a tsunami. But we've seen what happens when one party decides the rules don't apply to them. Donald Trump and his enablers are not going to sit back and watch this happen. Voter intimidation, manipulation of results, pressure on election officials. These aren't hypotheticals. They're a playbook we've already watched being run. Trump has made clear that he views elections and their results as something to be managed, not respected. 2026 will be no different. So yes, this is a historic moment. The structural conditions haven't favored Democrats this much in generations. The enthusiasm gap is real. The recruitment numbers are real. The special election results are real. None of that matters, though, if Democrats simply expect the other side to follow the rules. But here's our best defense. We need to deliver election margins so large that any attempt to manipulate the outcome is visible to everyone and that it looks exactly like what it is, a power grab in broad daylight. And that requires something Democrats have historically struggled with: unity. Primaries are healthy. They're a sign of a party that's competitive and engaged. Fight hard, make your case, let the voters decide. But when the primary is over, it's over, because the alternative is more MAGA, more Trump, more attacks on the institutions that hold this democracy together. We don't have the luxury of sitting it out. Illinois just showed us what that looks like in practice. 15 Democrats ran for the seat Jan Schakowsky held for nearly 3 decades. 15. That race was bruising. Millions in outside spending, clashes over deeply held beliefs, even FEC complaints between campaigns. My guest today emerged from that fight with 29% of the vote and is headed to the general election. Daniel Biss is a mathematician turned state legislator turned mayor of Evanston who has spent his career at the intersection of progressive policy and practical politics. He knows what it takes to win a hard primary, and he knows that winning the primary is just the beginning. Now he faces a general election in November as part of what could be a historic Democratic wave, if the party can hold together, turn out, and run up margins large enough that no one can question the result. Here's my conversation with Daniel Biss. Daniel Biss, thanks so much for joining us on the Ken Harbaugh Show. You just emerged from a bruising primary with a ton of Democratic competitors. It was a crowded field. And I would love your thoughts on where we go from here. As a party emerging from an election like this, how do we bring folks back together when much of the fight felt personal? It felt, it was tough. And you've been there before. You've run for office before, but we're at a time now where emotions are high, spirits are high, and we've got to figure out a way to, and I say this as a military vet, so I'm bringing that perspective. We've got to aim our cannons outside the fort, because that's where the real danger is. How do you think about that?
Well, a few things. First of all, I emerged from a 15 candidate primary with about 30% of the vote, right? So I got to come to this with a level of humility that says 70% of the Democrats in my district voted for somebody else. And by the way, 14 other people raised their hand and said, I think I'd be better than Daniel. So that means I've got a lot of relationship building to do, a lot of bridge building to do, and a lot of open listening to do. First inside our party and then across with independents and so forth. So that's number one. That's on me. Number two, I think it's really important for us to remember that this fight was pretty much waged, I would say almost exclusively on the ground of who is the best person to take on Trump and MAGA? Who is the fighter that we are going to send to deal with the absolute nightmare coming at us from Washington right now? That's unifying. And I don't expect everybody who disagreed with the outcome to just change their minds now. But what I do think is much more achievable is for us to say, so better or for worse, Daniel's who we got, but we want the same thing, which is someone who's going to go to Washington and fight back, someone who's going to go to Washington and stop Donald Trump and MAGA in their tracks. And I think there is, because of that, a lot more that unifies us as Democrats than divided us in the primary.
It's Ken Harbaugh. Quick break to let everyone know that the Meidas Studios and Valor Media Network original short film, Drone Hunters of Kherson, will have 2 in-person screenings in Washington, D.C. on April 21st and 23rd. I'll be there as part of a panel discussion afterwards that includes members of Congress and other experts. This is a free event open to the public, but register soon because spots are going fast. The RSVP link is in the notes below. Here's the trailer for Drone Hunters of Kherson. The contest between who gets who first. Do they get the drone, or does the drone get them? We're that close to the front. There's rubble everywhere, but people are still surviving. We just got an alert that there is a wave of 12 Shaheeds flying in over the Black Sea. There! That's the amazing thing about this war. It's a blend of trench warfare and Terminator. Are you hearing from non-Democrats? Are you talking to folks who might have voted for Trump once or twice, or God help us, 3 times, and are having that buyer's remorse? Do you think there is an opportunity, even in a district like yours, to grow the tent?
I think we have to grow the tent in every corner of the country. Now, I am not in a district that's considered a swing district. You know, there's a very good chance that a Democrat would win this district 70-30 or so, if not better. But that's still 30% of the people who may not be impactful on the general election result, but making sure we're winning people over who voted for Donald Trump once, twice, or as you said, God forbid, 3 times, and are looking at what they got and saying, I didn't think that's what I was voting for, and I don't like it. Winning them over across the country is just a fundamentally necessary part of the Democratic Party political project and the anti-MAGA political project and the Save the Country political project.
I want to drill down on that because there are risks as a candidate that attach to reaching those people and speaking in a language that might resonate with them but offend your own base. You know what I'm talking about here, right? There is a strain among the Democratic Party that says they made their bed, let them lie in it. We have no room for the MAGA voter or the Trump voter in this tent. How do you accommodate that? And it is an understandable anger given the damage that MAGA has done to this country, and especially to specific communities that have been the targets of MAGA's vitriol. How do you talk to folks about the need to bring others in who might have contributed to that victimization of the most vulnerable among us?
Yeah, I completely understand that pain and that anger. On certain days, I feel it. But I just think you cannot have a political movement that is always excommunicating people out of the tent. I think we need a big tent Democratic Party. I say this not only to my friends who share what you just said, but also to my friends in the center who will say, there's no room for, let's say Zoran Mamdani in the Democratic Party. We should not be in the business of throwing people out of our party. We should be in the business of growing our party, of welcoming people, whether those are people who have seen the party as not far enough left and are now willing to look at the party because of some of the exciting new progressive figures in it, or whether that's people who were interested in Donald Trump and MAGA for reasons that I don't have a hell of a lot of sympathy for, but nonetheless recognizes the reality of where American politics has been in the last decade. And, I live in Evanston, Illinois. My district includes parts of Chicago. Our community, including my own community of Evanston, where I'm the mayor, we were the victim of the most obscene, brutal, violent attacks from ICE and CBP. Honestly, it was nothing short of an occupation by our federal government. And you have 2 different things happening here. One is people who have been hurt, people who have seen their own relatives abducted or attacked or assaulted, who are hurt and heartbroken and angry and cannot believe that someone else voted for the regime that allowed that to happen. And then you have people who voted for Donald Trump in 2024 and are saying, wait a second, I didn't realize that's what I was asking for, and I don't like it. And we have to be able to build a coalition that includes both of those constituencies so we can win in 2026, win in 2028, and fix this nightmare.
I think that is probably smart as an electoral strategy when you're talking about voters. How do you apply that to influencers and to the media and to those influencers who on some of the big issues appear to have come around but were so hostile to the values that we share of democracy and liberalism and civil rights, basic human rights? Are you willing to go on to some of those shows and spread the message? Or are you in the camp that says, nope, there's a line and we are not going to give oxygen to, say, the Joe Rogans of the world who contributed so much to the rise of MAGA and Trumpism?
There has to be a line, but in my view, it's pretty far out there, right? Okay. It's pretty far out there. I wouldn't take an invitation from Nick Fuentes, but I think that you've got to be willing to talk really far across difference. And I think you ought to be honest about it, right? If I'm invited on the show of, Joe Rogan or some other figure who has said things that I find monumentally offensive, I wouldn't go on and pretend to not have those disagreements. I wouldn't go on and avoid that argument. But I think, you've got to be willing not only to talk to people that you have really strong disagreements with, but then to also just recognize that a political party that's going to be a majority party in a country of this size has got to talk in a lot of different places, and it's got to listen in a lot of different places. And I think if we spend too much energy making a giant list of people we're not willing to talk to, people we're not willing to have conversations with, people whose platforms we're not willing to access, that's a path into a permanent minority. And I just don't think that's a good idea.
That was an excerpt of my conversation with Daniel Biss. For the full interview, check out my Substack. The link's below. Thanks.
Love this video? Support independent media and unlock exclusive content, ad-free videos, and custom emojis by becoming a paid member of our YouTube channel today. You can also gift memberships to others. Let's keep growing together.